Logical reasoning is a systematic process of reaching conclusion and decision making through careful analysis. It is a method of making conclusion from the given evidence and premise in compliance with established rules of logic and argumentative structures. Philosophers like Ibn Sina, or known as Ibn Sina, and Al-Ghazali have described logic as a science that directs human minds away from fallacies and uncertainty, facilitating discrimination between truth and ambiguity. This field of study not only builds problem solving, but also helps identify fallacious reasoning and manipulative arguments, which are widespread in life, ranging from acts to dialogues. The two most influential approaches to logic are deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, both of which are vital in understanding how we draw conclusions based on different types of evidence.
Well, most of the time, it depends on in the situation. In that situation, of course, I will think about the pros and cons first. But when I already know what's going to happen, I just go through.
Yeah, like this. Okay.
Going with gut feeling, it's more of a sometimes I have not been in that situation, something new, so then I go with gut feeling. But most of the time, I do weigh in the pros and cons. So I would say I go for pros and cons first. But if it's something new, something I don't know, I do go with my gut feeling.
Just go dive in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now then, what's striking is that both interviewees report a mixed approach to decision making. The first interviewee, Ms. Mirza, says she uses gut feeling when she already knows what's going to happen. This implies a type of cognitive shortcut in which they're not explicitly weighing the pros and cons because experience has already concluded. This is an efficient, if not always consistent, way of deciding things in situations they know about.
I concur. The second interview, Ms. Farah, provides an even clearer distinction. She implicitly stated that they use a pros and cons list for a situation they know well, but resort to a gut feeling for something new. It is a great example of a person using both formal and informal logic. The pros and cons list is a deliberate deductive process, while the gut feeling in new situation is a reliance on intuition or inductive reasoning based on the lack of concrete data. It shows thoughtfulness, awareness of when different meta models are best applied. Moving on to the next question.
I don't, because my dad only got no.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But now, seriously, I guess okay, first thing really, I do not believe in fortune tellers. But if let's say if I do believe, the thing is, I like this question is because it goes with belief.
Yeah.
So if I believe, let's say I trip and fall and explode, that's my death, and then I believe it. I feel like if I believe it, it will likely happen.
Yeah.
It goes something along. Oh, can I?
Yeah, go.
Okay, so I do read about The Secrets. If you have read, it's a book called The Secrets. It's something about if one person believes in something and if you believe it and then it happened.
Yeah.
So you're basically attracting what you believe.
Yeah.
So it's all in the mind because it starts with the mind and then it manifests.
Yeah.
So that's the word here. People always say
Mind over
manifest.
matter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I do think so.
Okay. So your
Ms. Mirza's response shows a firmly practical, almost fatalistic mindset. Her immediate denial of the prophecy by the fortune teller by saying, "My death only God knows," shows an appeal to an external divine source rather than a logical process. They're essentially rejecting the premise of the question outright, which prevents them from using the circular reasoning or paradox that the question had proposed exploring. Don't you think so?
That's a good point. Ms. Farah takes a hypothetical in full, however. Her argument is above the plane of psychological belief and informal logic. They appeal to the secret and manifestation, which makes their belief in the prophecy directly causal of the outcome. This is an exhibition of an awareness of the self-fulfilling prophecy, where they think something will occur and thus it is more likely to do so. It is not based on a formal logical proof, but it does involve a subtle awareness of how belief and perceptions can impact the world, which is a form of informal logic. Okay, so we can move on to the last question.
I will choose the natural expert because even though you someone that you like, you know them long, it doesn't mean that everything they say was right. Sometimes the natural expert, like a doctor, they are more experienced about it. I will try to find the resource, for example, like your medicine, right?
Yeah.
So I will ask for to the expert how this kind of thing work for me, or but it also can you can also ask to the people that you like, is it okay with you or not? If they say okay, then I will ask the expert.
This is a good one because it has because I experienced this and I like to reflect on this. It does have bias when you like the person. So this, because I love psychology, I love marketing. So what I like to reflect on myself. So I have this colleague. I'm very close to her. So she likes to recommend me certain products. Like, oh, Farah, try this. It's so good. I tried it. It worked. and I tend to believe her more.
Yeah.
I do have this bias, like, oh yeah, I trust her. I will buy it, and I do end up buying all the things she recommends. So that is, I do trust someone I like. But at the same time, I do like stop and think, does this really work? Or I like her and I trust her. I respect her opinion, so that is why I end up buying things. But at the same time, I do this third party person. I do my research in the context of buying things or in the context of trusting like sources or information.
I think it might depend on the context.
Yeah, it does really depend on the context.
For this question, Ms. Mirza's response shows a clear preference for reasoning based on logic. She explicitly states that they would choose a neutral expert over someone they like, because they do understand that an emotional connection is not a measure of correctness. This shows sensitivity to the appeal to authority fallacy, because she is rightly criticizing that the expert's knowledge and experience are the correct basis of confidence and not the personal sentiment of liking the individual.
I would like to supplement that Ms. Farah presents to us a more realistic real-life image. She admits on having a tendency to trust those she likes, and instead of the deep penetration of informal logic and emotions into everyday decision-making. But she is also acutely sensitive to the bias and most significantly able to overcome it when the stakes are high, such as with drugs. This suggests that her logical thinking is context-dependent and that she is able to shift from a more emotional, informal to a strict research-based mode when the situation demands it.
For the conclusion, our results demonstrate a consistent pattern. People are good at applying rules of logic when they consciously recognize a situation as one that warrants a close, reasoned approach. The interviewees demonstrated this by giving pros and cons lists top billing, seeking information from experts, and reading whole articles. Thus, the potential for logical thinking exists, but it's more a question of choice rather than habit.
I completely agree. The application of logic seems highly situational and stake-dependent. When the choice is personal or when the information comes from an authority, individuals are more likely to cognitive biases and informal fallacies such as appealing to authority and relying on gut feeling. This implies that even when humans have the capacity for good logic, their default setting can be guided by emotional, social, and intuitive motivations.
Yeah, I think it makes the product more trustworthy because, it's hard to see someone get scammed by a big name or big artist,
Not really, but if they show some kind of result and show some demonstration, then yes.
I see. So you would rather believe actions more than just words?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
For the second question, Ms. Ada's response clearly illustrates a reliance on the appeal to authority fallacy, a form of informal logic. She is accepting the product not because of the quality, but because the celebrity is associated with it, and assumes celebrity status is linked with reliability and a lack of risk.
That's a great point. In contrast to Ms. Amina's answer, which is empirical in nature, she was not swayed by the celebrity status alone. They need to observe a practical, visible demonstration of the effectiveness of the product, which is a more logical, evidence-based manner of choosing. Okay, so the next question is the last one. Let's hear it out.
Yes, of course, I have to read the whole thing so that I can conclude things. If not, I think my opinion doesn't matter if I didn't read the whole thing.
Absolutely. I would want to know the whole story before making a wrong opinion and someone will be mad and I'll be embarrassed. It's better to know the whole thing rather than making a wrong fact.
It is encouraging to discover that both interviewees embrace a fundamental rule of critical thinking. In declining to read the whole article, they are essentially avoiding the fallacy of argumentum ad ignorantium, or the fallacy of appeal to ignorance. They know that there is not enough information for them to come to a well-supported opinion, so they wish to examine more evidence first.
Right, and it's also an exercise in deductive thinking. They are taking the premise that a headline alone isn't sufficient evidence to draw a conclusion and are therefore withholding their conclusion until they have all the information. It's a logical step that doesn't jump to conclusions, which is one of the elements of logical thinking.
In conclusion, based on what we've discovered, we can conclude that people's capacity for logical reasoning is not necessarily as sound as you might assume. The first couple of questions reveal a trend of relying on informal fallacies, specifically the bandwagon and appeal to authority fallacies, when drawing personal conclusions or evaluating information. This suggests that emotional or social stress, such as conformity, pressure, or trust in a popular individual, generally supplants more systematic evidence-based reasoning.
I agree, but the third question gives a contradictory and more optimistic result. Both interviewees had a clear concept of deductive reasoning when given a more intellectual task like reading the news. They knew that forming a good opinion requires a whole set of premises, as in reading the whole piece, and willingly rejected making a conclusion based on limited information. This indicates that while they may be preyed upon by fallacies in some contexts, there is clear potential for good logical thinking when they believe that they have to do it.
From our research, it is evident that although people have the ability of logical reasoning, its use in everyday life is far from consistent. Our comparison of the interviews brought out an interesting paradox. An individual's decision-making and information handling strategy is extremely context-dependent and on the perceived gravity of the result. When a product recommendation or evaluation by another person is involved, individuals tend to fall back on informal fallacies, such as the bandwagon fallacy and the appeal to authority fallacy. This practice suggests that social influences, interpersonal relationships, and cognitive shortcuts quite frequently override a more systematic, evidence-based process. The gut feeling was given precedence either in situations of familiarity or where the stakes were perceived to be low, indicating that efficiency and personal comfort sometimes took precedence over a purely rational process. However, when presented with a task that they identified as requiring due diligence, such as fact-checking a news source or making a decision with significant personal implications, the interview participants revealed themselves to be practicing deductive reasoning. They correctly called for more information, rejected conclusions based on inadequate data, and searched for authoritative impartial sources. This indicates that the ability to think logically is not lacking, but is a skill that is used deliberately when individuals feel the necessity for it. In short, while we all are susceptible to irrational shortcuts, the capacity for reasoning correctly is a powerful capacity that we use to understand the world around us. I think that is all from us, so yeah. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.